Today, we'll do a meditation where we will experience God's being, but we won't experience God's being as something other than us or separate from us. This is going to be a meditation where your being melts into God's being, and all that remains is God's being. So, in the beginning of today's video, I'm going to be doing a talk. I'm going to read out a message that's going to help with our meditation. Then we're going to put it directly into practice and learn and practice what it means to experience God's being as our very own. Enjoy the video. God's face looks like what God's voice sounds like. They are the same. God's face isn't a sight, and God's voice isn't a sound, and God's will isn't a thought. God's face is what is. God's voice is what is. God's will is what is. To see God's face, you have to turn away from form. To hear God's voice, you have to become quiet. To understand God's will, you have to surrender. We're going to go over each one of these instructions shortly. I mean, otherwise, there's not really much you can do with this writing. It's not to be thought about. These are instructions that we'll go over one by one. To see God's face, you have to forget your own. To hear God's voice, you have to let yours drown in silence. To experience God's will, you have to give up the notion, I do. God's face is completely hidden, yet in plain sight, but books can't take you there. God's voice is completely silent, yet most obvious, but words can't help you. God's will feels distant, yet it is the only fact. You are living it right now. Make yourself available by keeping yourself empty. Make yourself available by keeping yourself empty. Empty of what? All convictions, judgments, opinions, resistance. This is not at all philosophical. This is not at all theory. This is instruction. This is pointers. This is practice. So God's face isn't a sight, isn't a sound. The voice isn't a sound. God's will isn't a thought. Shows you where not to look. Shows you which instrument not to rely on to know God. You will not find God in any object of sight, in any object of sound, in any thought. You can't limit God to that, to something you will find in that realm. Yes, all of these things are made of God, you can say, or they're made of God's being, you can say that, but you can't look for God in any of these things. By the way, for today's message, if you don't like the word God, you can use self, source, truth, reality. But don't be so afraid of the word God, okay? Don't be so serious. So God's face is what is. God's voice is what is. God's will is what is. It doesn't seem like an instruction, but it is. What is it telling us? We have to look at what is rather than what appears, what comes and goes, what appears to be real for a moment, but then ceases to exist. Means God cannot be found in that which appears and passes, in that which is real only momentarily. To see God's face, you have to turn away from form. This basically says the same thing as this, because it is form that comes and goes. It is form that appears and passes. It is form that claims to be real, but ceases to exist in a moment. So to see God's face, we have to turn away from form. God's face has no form. To hear God's voice, you have to become quiet. Not just speech, but also it's the internal silence that matters even more. We have to value being quiet. And then not being quiet, waiting to hear God's voice as a personal voice, for that also will be a form. Don't keep looking for form to arise. Anything that can arise will have a form and will pass. Therefore, it's not God's face. It's not God's voice. In the absence of looking for form, we discover God's voice, not as a personal voice telling us things. Don't conceive God's voice in personal terms. Become quiet. Let all notions of personality and even concepts of who or what God is to drop away. Become quiet. And to understand God's will, we have to surrender. It's sort of opposite, right? We feel like, let me first understand God's will or what God's will is. Let me first fully reason it out, understand it, so that I can surrender, so that I can feel safe to surrender. No, we have to pay the price first. You have to be willing to surrender in order to understand God's will. The leap of faith is first, understanding second, practice first, clarity second, not the other way around. Doubt will never be rewarded. Doubt will always be rewarded with more illusion, more things to doubt. Courage, devotion, invoke clarity. It's not even that the reward from some greater being is wisdom. No, they are the way of wisdom. They are the way of clarity. So to understand God's will, we have to surrender. We have to loosen up our plans of what I want to experience and what I shouldn't experience, where I want life to flow, what I want it to become for my satisfaction, for my gain so that I can feel fulfilled and feel like I had a good life, better than others, or at least equally as good as the others that I look up to or look and compare myself to. Our plans of life have to be replaced with God's plan. Attachment to our plan's fruition has to be replaced with acceptance of God's plan as it happens moment by moment. That is surrender. To see God's face, you have to forget your own. We cannot meet God while conceiving of ourselves as a person. You can't sit at the same table as God as a person. We have to become empty of all ideas of who I am, what I look like, what is my personality. We have to completely let go of conceiving ourselves to be a body, to be a mind. Empty of all self-concept. Only then can we enter the conversation with God. Because we do not meet God as something other. God reveals himself as our own being, not the person's being. It is only God's being. Our notions of ourself have to melt away. Our notions of life have to be given up. In the emptiness of concept, we discover God's face. To hear God's voice, you have to let yours drown in silence. All your thoughts about all things, including God's voice. Let it melt away in the silence. Let it melt away by lack of interest. Let go of interest in where you cannot find God. If the teaching has instructed us that God cannot be found in your concepts, in your thoughts about things, instantly, why we should just let go of interest in them. At least in moments of practice, try, right? It's like completely let go of all care that you have for your own thinking. Let the thinking drown in silence. Don't care what thinking has to say about this teaching. Let even those thoughts drown out in silence. Don't care about doubts, resistances. Let even those thoughts drown out in silence. Commit to silence. In the absence of your personal voice, God's voice may be heard, not as another personal voice that speaks to you. Let go of that concept. It is not a form. These things will be confusing to the mind, right? Especially if we are new to this style of instruction, which is why you have to let go of the mind. Don't try to bring the mind into this. Let go of the boundaries of your mind. Let go of trying to remain within the boundaries of your mind and trying to understand that which is outside of them. We let go of needing to understand. We let go of caring about doubt. That's the simplest way. To experience God's will, you have to give up the notion I do. I am the creator of my life. I am the doer of my life. I am a body that acts. I am a mind that thinks. These are all mind made ideas that have to be given up to really experience the isness of God's will. God's face is completely hidden, yet in plain sight, but books can take us there. Hidden because we try to see God's face with the wrong instruments. We try to think, see, hear, taste, touch, feel. It's not in those. Those instruments are the wrong instruments. So our way of looking has to change. We try to learn more and more about God, about reality, about life, about who I am, thinking that is going to induce some sort of experience or lead to some revelation that will instantly solve things for us. Book learning has its place, but ultimately it is only putting down the book and putting what the book says into practice moment by moment, regardless of difficulty, regardless of doubt, that ultimately takes us into God's presence. God's voice is completely silent, yet most obvious. But words won't help you. It is the background of all noise, even the background of our own thoughts, ever present. Sil- Silent and unrecognizable because we are lost in the noise. So we have to change that, right? Let our own voice drown out in the silence. God's will feels distant, yet it is the only fact. You're living it right now. When we set aside our analysis, descriptions, and judgments, what is makes itself known. When we stop clinging and resisting, what is makes itself known. So, our main instruction is make yourself available by keeping yourself empty. Empty of what? All convictions. You don't know anything about anything. Yeah, of course, you have we have a lot of knowledge about what things are, what I look like, what the world is, how it functions. But this is all relative knowledge. Don't take any of these things to be absolute. Let all these appearances be, but like no set conviction in our heart about what I must be, what the world definitely is, you know, being completely malleable. Anything may be true, anything may be untrue. No strong judgments. Judgment restricts us. Judgment doesn't allow us to see things as they really are. It keeps us restricted to the personal lens, which is very, very limited. So stop judging life, what happens, what it means for you, whether it's good or bad, right or wrong. When you see things out in the world, yeah, you have a relationship with them personally, but now let your personal relationship with all things be superficial. It's there, but it's not also absolute, meaning it's not the ultimate truth. We have very strong judgments about what is right and what is wrong, what is good, what is bad, what should happen, what should not happen. Have your judgments, but don't be attached to any of them being correct. Anything may be true, anything may be untrue. Same with opinions. Your opinion about anything. And most of all, resistance. It is resistance, the unwillingness to experience what is, that most of all keeps God's face hidden, because God's face is what is. So if you keep resisting what is, we can never know God. Then our life is just forever a chase of what I think I want, in which I keep resisting what is and never knowing things as they really are. So I'd just like to sit with you for a little while with this message, meditate on these words a little bit, put them into practice a little bit together. One of the main convictions to let go of is I am this body, and that this body is important, that what happens to this body is important. Let's not be afraid. Any firm plan that you have for what this body's future must look like is a hindrance. Give it over to God. Surrender yourself. And then experience what comes. Do not ask, how do I surrender, and then act. Once again, stop conceiving of yourself as the body that acts, the mind that decides and thinks. Thinking is experience. It happens as it must. Action is experience. It happens as it must. I am not that. Surrender yourself and witness whatever experience appears. Being the total allowance of experience as it comes and passes. Here and now, drop any image you have of yourself. Who you think you are is not what you actually are. The inner voice is not you, it's just an experience, arising and passing. Practice emptying yourself of all concepts, all thoughts about anything, including spirituality, including God. Practice emptying yourself of all concepts, including motive, expectation, next, rest in that absence. But if there's a concept lingering that you are resting in that absence as a somebody, expose that, recognize it, and drop that also. Do not receive this message as a somebody. Your somebodyness is a perceived experience. Your thought that you are a person hearing these words is a concept. your thought about what to do about this and how to not receive this as a person is also a perceived thought. So our practice is a subtraction, a letting go of the unessential, not an acquiring of the real. Doing this practice with the hope of finding something is itself a motive you have to expose within yourself and let go of subscribing to. And then rest in the absence of all wanting, rest in the absence of conceiving yourself to be a someone that can get something or somewhere. In that absence of concept, in that absence of being a someone, lies the presence of God, which is one's own presence. To experience it as God's presence, you have to forget yourself. There lies our practice. All right, let's end it here. Put this into practice. Sit daily for meditation and sink into your being, becoming empty of all ideas of who you think you are, what life is. Lead your entire spiritual journey with this practice instead of just accumulating more concepts, more teachings, more talks, more guidances. Use all those things. There's a space for all of those things in our practice, but the main thing is actually sitting and practicing, and then also then trying to do our best to do that during the day. Don't just say I'll do it during the day, but then keep running away from really sitting in isolation with this. And don't only practice sitting in isolation, seek to also embody the truth in day-to-day life. So do your best. Of course, ask questions here or in our community. Thanks for watching today. I'll see you next time.